Brought to you by Globals.
Hello, amazing people, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another edition of your discursive and informative program. It is Global Insider, and today we want to look at another aspect, which is the media. As the world is evolving, we also look at how the media landscape has evolved, and of course, and how the media plurality has led to the decline of Western hegemony, or probably the decline of narratives directed by the mainstream media in a rapidly ever evolving global landscape. Ladies and gentlemen, media plurality emerges as a pivotal force that reshapes not just public discourse and challenges, it equally challenges traditional power dynamics, which is actually rooted in Western hegemony. The late 80s and the early 90s signaled the decline of mainstream media, opening the room for an alternative. Thus, a diverse media platform thrive. They provide, as diverse media platforms thrive, they provide alternative narratives that not only reflect varied cultural realities but also empower marginalized voices previously obscured by singular dominant discourses. This transformation, according to reports over the decades, ignited a critical examination of how global communication systems are shifting. So, together, during this discussion with a panel of experts, we're also going to uncover how varied media landscapes and the shifting power dynamics in global communication are shaping the media landscape globally. This topic actually explores how varied media outlets impact public discourse, the role of technology in democratizing media access, and how these changes correlate with the fading influence of the Western nations on global affairs. Reports note that the historical trajectory of Western dominance in global media has established an enduring framework where crises in the global south are often framed through colonial narratives. That's actually an example that depict these regions are perpetually dependent or chaotic, something which is very problematic in the 21st century. So, international distortion of information and negative propaganda remains a future of mainstream media. We can recall the 2010 Haitian earthquake, the political unrest in Venezuela, how this revealed the Western narratives, which are frequently overshadowed the agency of local actors and communities. These media portrayals not only shaped public perception, but also influenced international responses and policy priorities, reinforcing and interventionist logic that privileges Western interests while sidelining the nuanced historical and structural factors at play. However, the ascent of the non-Western media outlets and the democratization potential of technology challenge these hegemonic narratives as per report. Examples will include the alternative voice of the Arab Spring, the Ukraine crisis in the 21st century, the recent Benin coup rhetorics, among other many examples. So, as we explore these transformative developments, several pertinent questions will arise. How do alternative media platforms disrupt the traditional narratives and have sustained Western probably hegemony? In what ways does the rise of digital communication in the space of new media affect information access and promote engagement in global discussions? What are the socio-political and economic implications of media plurality for contemporary governance and international relations? Of course, a panel of experts would this day provide us with case studies and insights into this powerful interplay between media representation and global power structures, of course, pushing for a critical reassessment of the narratives that shape our understanding of crisis and issues around the world at large, especially in this era of multilateralism and the New World Order. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. And I will join you right after the jingle as we continue to uncover the panel for today and, of course, what is on the table for discussion. Welcome back. If you are just tuning in, it is your informative and knowledge sharing program, Global Insider. Without much ado, let's go straight away to introducing our panel. And we are privileged to welcome Professor Jagdish Khatri, who is a global analyst, author, and the speaker is joining us live from India. You're welcome, Professor.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. It's a privilege to be on this platform of great learning and sharing, and I think that is the need of our to pool our expertise and experience together. So thank you very much.
Absolutely, it is very imperative, and we thank you for honoring this rendezvous. Let's go to North Africa, precisely to Tunisia. We're being joined by Madame Najet Zamouri, distinguished professor and pedagogy consultant who doubles as a rights activist. Just to note that she is also member of the Press Council in Tunisia, representing the public. Always a pleasure having you on this platform, madam.
It's a pleasure. So thank you so much, Clarice, to be with you again in this great and very, very important show. Thank you again.
Indeed, very important and timely as the world is facing global transformation. To Spain, let's acknowledge the presence of Dr. Enrique Refollo, who is a journalist and also a political scientist. Always a pleasure, Senor.
Of course, always a pleasure to be with you, with all my great colleagues. So very glad to be here. And just in case, beforehand, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to having an amazing celebration and a good start of the new year 2026. Just to note that some guests will be joining us subsequently, but then we're going to ride off right away with the contextualizing our topic for discussion on media plurality and how it has led to the decline of Western hegemony. And I'll write off with you, of course, Professor Jagdish Khatri, holistically for your understanding and how this can help the audience out there to understand the narratives and why it is timely during this time.
Thank you, madam. It's a very important and timely topic chosen by you for this discussion. We all know that media is said to be the fourth pillar of democracy, with legislature, executive, and judiciary being the other three ones. And the role assigned to media should be and has been that of being a watchdog,
Absolutely.
a whistleblower, a red flag carrier wherever necessary, and also sometimes as think tank to advise on important matters and build public opinion. But what we are seeing today is in last few decades, what is happening is that media is being used more as a tool to build narratives of a particular interest to individual nations and regions. And these narratives become tools for building perceptions. And nowadays, what is happening is all political battles, they are being fought more in the mind than on the field. And these perceptions are used in the political process, in elections also, and in justification of actions that the powers that we are going to take. Let us take an example of Iraq. When Iraq was being bombarded, the narrative was set earlier to that Iraq is producing weapons of mass destruction, which are still to be found yet, and which was not found to be true. And now the same thing is happening. At that time also media played a great role in building this narrative of WMD. And now media itself has turned into weapon of mass distractions. So distracting the mind from real issues that people face or the world is facing, challenges the world is facing, to some issues which may not be relevant but are of interest to Western powers. So this is how media is being manipulated, and hence media plurality is extremely important. And I would like to say that along with media plurality, we must also go for and work for media accessibility and media acceptability. Media accessibility will be where the media is able to reach wide sections of masses, providing a large reach. And media acceptability is built over time with its quality and to develop faith in the media and respect that it should get. So these are my initial thoughts. Thank you, Malik.
Thank you so much. Of course, quite explicit. And in the same perspective, we will get the viewpoint of Madam Najat Zamouri on the concept of media plurality and its relevance in today's world.
Yeah, so thank you so much for that question, mainly because I am Tunisian and I witnessed the democratic transition, and before that the uprising in 2011, and so that's why I can say that media plurality strengthens democracy, also by ensuring that no single actor or state or corporate or ideological monopolizes public discourse. I mean by that a diverse media environment enables investigate journalists, exposes corruption, and holds power accountable by offering multiple perspectives on political decision making. Plurality or media plurality protects against propaganda and disinformation. It allows. Sorry, I think that my camera is off, so it is. So I carry on. I said that. Plurality protects against propaganda and disinformation. Plural media systems reduce the risk of propaganda by, first of all, allowing competing narratives to challenge official versions of events, or encourages fact-checking across outlets, or making information ecosystems more resilient to manipulation. So when audiences can compare sources, they are better equipped to detect bias and misinformation. Plurality in media also creates space for women and gender minorities, of course, or the minorities, youth, regional communities, ethnic, linguistic, and religion minorities, and human rights defenders and grassroots movements. This inclusiveness contributes to epistemic justice, recognizing marginalized groups as producers of knowledge rather than mere subjects of coverage. And at the end, the plurality in media balances conflict and crisis coverage. What does it mean? I mean that plural media environments are more likely to provide historical and political context, include diverse local and international voices, and reduce dehumanizing or securitized narratives. So this is particularly important in conflict reporting, where dominant narratives can legitimize violence or obscure power asymmetrics. And this is the hegemony maybe of the Western media that maybe we are going to speak about afterwards.
Absolutely, it's imperative to look at the correlation between the two contexts, that is the media plurality and how it is affecting the Western hegemony through mainstream media. In the same perspective with you, Dr. Enrique, we appreciate to have a holistic understanding of the probably historical context of how this media plurality has affected Western hegemony, transcending to the realities of the 21st century.
This is a very good question, and adding to the things that were told by our colleagues, I speak from Spain, from Europe, so we have interesting context. I mean, the whole situation with mainstream media in Europe is to defend, to propose, to support a war against Russia. That's the main point, the key goal in the mainstream media. It's like Russia is very bad. We need to be prepared for a war against Russia. All our economic efforts must be oriented towards military build-up in Europe, and if you deny the situation, you are a Putin's agent, and you are anti-European, anti-patriotic agent. So it's a type for criminalize other voices. This means if you talk against the massive narrative from mainstream media, from most of the politicians, the European governments, or especially the European Union institutions, you are some kind of foreign agent. You can be a total native from these countries, but suddenly you became foreign agent under foreign service because you don't want that your country, your continent will be destroyed in a senseless war. This means also another thing, very important, because it's a different context, I think totally different than Africa or India. Back to Davos Forum in January 2024, Mr. Schwab and Mrs. Ursula von der Leyen, the President of European Commissions, they were agreed in one point. They are the guardians of the access. Who guards? What are they guarding? Which access? This means they are the guardians of the massive media, of the mainstream media. They are protecting European peoples from bad voices, which are in the media sphere, not only from outside other countries, like especially from Russia or China or Venezuela or Iran or many other countries outside, but maybe we have the evil inside of our continent. We have these bad people who are making all the best against European institutions. destabilization of our institutions, and so on and so on. Yes, of course. This is a terrible war narrative only bound to the massive censorship. It's absolutely that. It's the destruction of alternative media because, okay, if you don't have money, okay, a media is a job. If you can't receive the funding from your subscribers, from common people, from average people, not from big institutions, from European Union or NATO, or some governments, as usually, for example, in countries like Spain, where government pays to mainstream media. Okay, they need official propaganda, but they are trying to destroy all the little journalists, little media, alternative media, for example, creating these censorship laws or creating a scheme of fines, like you have to be registered. If you are only a YouTuber, a normal YouTuber, okay, no, you are not YouTuber, you are not an analyst. Depending on your figures, you became a media, so you have to pay taxes as media, and you can be repressed as media. So they are always trying to destroy all the alternative voices against the massive narrative. That's our situation.
If we can note the points which have been highlighted already, we now see how the entanglement of the media landscape at this very turbulent moment, especially in international diplomacy and relations, looking at the proliferation of disinformation and negative propaganda or fake news. I will stay with you, Dr. Enrique. You quite mentioned some very pertinent case studies, but then I would love us to look at how the emergence of this alternative media has affected the maybe shifting power dynamics, not just in Europe but in the global world, and how this has indirectly led to or directly led to the decline of the Western hegemony.
We make usual jokes in Spain about maybe we have to be in exile in some Spanish-speaking countries in America, like in other times, in other decades, in other centuries, that some people from Europe had to be in exile to America, sometimes some people to USA, some other people to Spanish-speaking countries, to Latin America in general. So now we are living again the same situation. We are watching that maybe the censorship will be so hard that some people just only go out from Europe. And what this means, there is no hegemony in soft power area. It's only hard power. You have to be sidelined with an official narrative, or you will be under problems, under legal and economic problems. So, as other times in this program, I told many times that the world is watching Europe. Maybe some people in this mainstream media, in this official government, are thinking that if we talk, only in Europe are listening us. But no, all the world, the whole world is also watching Europe, watching these crazy things. Or, for example, an USA example. Some days ago, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, put sanctions on 2 judges from the International Court. It's absolutely crazy because it's not related to USA. It's related to the State of Israel. And the whole media in USA, yes, this is very good. We are defending our ally. But the people is, no, you are defending another country, not our interests, not our things. In the case of European media and European governments, it's the same. They are pressing for a war, not pressing in favor of people, because at the same time we have protests of farmers, of European farmers in Brussels. But what is talking about from mainstream media, from the most of the governments? No, they are very bad, and they are on the verge to say that these farmers, these European farmers, are Russian agents. It won't be the same time. It won't be the first time. For example, when the times of Yellow Vest, they told that Russia were gathering these demonstrators in France because, I don't know, maybe mental powers from Putin, something like that, because they didn't want to accept that the policies from Macron, from government of France, were so unpopular. No, the fault must be outside in other areas. We are perfect. We are wonderful. And no, we are not wonderful. The world is watching that you are not wonderful. You are destroying your own continent. What are you expecting from other continents, from countries out of Europe, out of Western countries? For example, also North America and USA and Canada. What is these people expecting from it? If you destroy your own countries, if you attack your own peoples, okay, the rest of the world will say, okay, we don't want to have any relation with you. You destroy yourself and ourselves. We are not your Western world. If you destroy yourself, the rest of the world have less significance than your own countries. It's absolutely a nonsense. Geopolitical final point, just for saying.
Thank you so much, Dr. Enrique. Just been notified that Dr. Anzi Ukraini, her geopolitics and strategic studies expert, has joined the conversation, and I'll be welcoming you, sir, with a topic already. We are aware that this is a topic which is of great relevance to the African continent, a continent that has been held in a web of, this media plurality for over the years, and we love to take it from the African perspective. How do you how can you analyze in general the topic media plurality and the decline of Western hegemony, and how this will affect or is already affecting a revolution across the African continent in changing its media landscapes to write narratives that will suit the agenda of the continent?
Okay, so thank you very much, and hello to the panelists. I want to take it from the African point of view. What you see as media plurality is what you might best describe as the leftover of the vestiges of imperialism. A system of colonial reign was instituted, and that included how mass communication, how public opinion, how information is being disseminated, and the command structure that is going to hand over and translate that information from the point of reception to the point of dissemination, as it were. Understanding it this way will make it easy for us as a people to see that what we see as the hegemony of Western media is a tool in the hands of the imperialists to continually dominate and perpetually impoverish and undermine the thinking faculties of the African people, and by extension, the third world nations of the world. In Africa, we can see that the predominant medium of information dissemination, or what you might call media outfit, until about the 19 or early 2000, where social media came on board, has been the traditional medium of information circulation, oftentimes dominated by these Western media or their agents. Some of them had instituted national agents that disguised as national media, but in reality were serving the interest and opinion of their colonial impostors. In recent times, we have seen the wake of new media in the regions of the world. In the Middle East, we've seen outfits like Al Jazeera coming up to provide a parallel and standardized alternative. We have also seen in Nigeria how during the NSAS, social media was used to create global awareness about the event that was happening, due in part to the poor reportage and poor attention that it received from conventional media. So I wouldn't want to make it a long sermon, but as an introductory remark, I would state categorically that that system, that traditional system, that dominance, that hegemonic institution of control in terms of mass media has been challenged in recent times, and it is loosening up or opening up spaces for greater engagement for nationalists to come up with an avenue to tell their stories the way it best suits them. But more than that, in the way that it best communicates their real pains. Because telling a story, an important aspect of telling a story is communicating the emotions of the storyteller or the emotions of the people who themselves are the primary actors of the situation which is being spoken or written about. If you are not able to communicate that emotion, then I guess it's just another fictitious literature that has been generated from the mind in abstract terms. And of course, it is not going to address any tangible issues because at best it is going to remain an abstract construction. So if you see the production of ideas or the generation of ideas that this alternative has brought on the table, you'll begin to realize, or at first even begin to question, what exactly the interest of Western hegemony represents in the sort of stories that are told or how such stories are told. So we see how there is a gradual shift from storytelling in a way that suppresses a people, in a way that disenfranchises a people, in a way that extracts humanity from the situation and leaves storytelling. So you cannot extract humanity from the pains of a people just because you want to tell their story in a way that paints you a harmless fellow. You cannot separate yourself from a people. If I am to tell my story as a person, or the story of Nigeria, for example, cannot be completely told without emphasizing the role of colonialism. It cannot be told without emphasizing the long reign of military takeover of England.
Yeah.
It cannot be told without the effort that civil regimes have put in place over the years to make efforts about democratization and setup of institutional democracy that can take the country from where they took off at independence to a much more advanced stage. So if you tell that story from only a one-sided angle that Nigeria is rich in oil or poor, unilaterally poor, you are telling a story that gives a wrong impression that we are probably unable to manage those resources or do not even understand the depth and value of the resources available for the government to use. But you have refused to tell the real reason behind the inability to deploy resources in advancement of state goals or state policy.
Absolutely. And I think I would just interject, but I will come to you subsequently because there is actually some sort of controversy as to how to use the diverse media platforms to actually inform or educate the public. But then before that, let's come back to Professor Jagdisha. Here we are looking at the place of the media. We have looked at how it is shifting power dynamics in the global world and in the new phase of globalization in the 21st century. Let's still take this topic to contextualize, of course, with the sphere of diplomacy. While talking earlier on, Professor, you made mention of that the media is a watchdog, both for the people and the public. The media has become a tool that, governments or people used to attain an objective. And now, what is the problematic here? Which I can say is the intentionality. What aim do you stand to probably or objective to attain with the major narratives? With the use of India as a case study pertaining its involvement in the Russian-Ukraine crisis. India has had a policy of non-alignment, but we saw how narratives, especially from the conventional media, championing the fact that India shouldn't probably buy Russian oil and so on and so forth, and how these narratives can boil down into, crumbling the economic viability of a country should there be no alternative for media. We're still at the point of wanting to understand or give the relevance of the diversity of media sources or news sources in the global world.
Thank you, madam. As you mentioned, the power dynamics at global level is shifting. And this shift, I would like to say, is from total alignment and non-alignment, there is something now which is called multi-alignment. And India, as you mentioned, is following the policy of multi-alignment, where you are not taking sides, but you are taking the side of peace, as Prime Minister Modi recently mentioned in meeting with President Putin, that we are not neutral, we are on the side of peace. So whatever efforts are being made for bringing peace to the continents, we are with them. With regard to the shifting power dynamics, we see that things are changing and the winds of change are obvious. Even take the case of African continent. We are watching with interest the leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. The way he has come up and energized the AES states along with Mali and Niger, and they have formed an alliance, and now there is talk of common currency also. But on the other side, you see, in the same continent, G20 meeting happened, and very graciously, gracefully, the disputes between South Africa and USA were handled by South African president during and after G20 also. But what we see is that he didn't get much support from other African nations. So that is some, even African Union also. So that is where things must be corrected. You see, respect is earned through strength, and strength comes from unity. This unity of purpose has to be there, and then it is to be projected through various media channels. What is our viewpoint, and that has to be broadcasted, and especially you see the way global south is coming together. Now it is making Europe and USA and Western powers nervous, and that is why they are taking actions like tariffs, sanctions, denying visas to certain countries and all that. I see these acts as just trying to reclaim their power status rather than from the strength of the being a powerful nation. But surely, what happens is that someday the way things are emerging, even lone voices of dissent will be converted into collective chorus against these hegemony and dominance. And that is what where media has to be channelized and a proper viewpoint is to be projected. Thank you.
Absolutely, very imperative. I think we are in the transformative era of the media, actually looking at to what extent we can still use the media to build the world. It's often said that you can use the media to bring about solution to the world's problems, but then if we are not careful, we can still use the media to promote war that will lead to more vulnerability of relations, be it bilateral, multilateral relations, and hijacking the precepts of the world being a global village, ladies and gentlemen. And I think it is worth noting, according to the preamble, we noted that this Western maybe decline of Western influence in terms of controlling narratives as a result of the emergence of other alternative news. We can talk of the CGTN. We're talking about RT, and that is where I'm coming with you, Dr. Enrique. We understand that Russia today is on the sanctions because then in the Western platform, so as not to allow others get the narrative, especially of what is happening in the Ukraine crisis, and talking to some people in particularly in Europe and in the Western world, they highlighted the fact that they are not able to get access to RT or other alternative news agencies. Here we are looking at the effect of the censorship being affecting the minds of the millions of viewers out there, that is making the minds to be at war. In your own perspective and with the realities of the new media, what do you think is that transformative power of the media that can be used to harness today's very tumultuous and complex media landscape that will not lead to further manipulation or maybe polarization of narratives?
Yes, it's very interesting, the issue of the censorship about Russia Today, Sputnik, and other Russian media, especially this Russian media in languages of Europe as English, French, German, Spanish too. This is a very interesting issue, a key issue, because in Europe, it's like we are democracies, we have freedom of speech, we have debates, we can have arguments, but respectfully, and so on and so on. But in the reality, when there is this historical choke point, okay, no, censorship. We don't want to make some agreements, discussions, events for talking. No. We censor the other side, and that's all. And we don't have any discuss. All the things must be like one track mind, in one sense, and no other thing. I mean, if the mainstream media says something because this was paid by governments, by European Union or by NATO, okay, this must be the official version for the good media. Imagine that I will provide you an example. in one of the mainstream Spanish channels some days ago, it was broadcasted the following. Yes, according to a survey, the official televisions, are the most reliable media with regards to social networks and YouTube. It's like, okay, you made a survey, and in your survey, you are the best. And you are broadcasting to the people that televisions are the best. One independent survey is telling that you are the most reliable media. Okay, the media that receive money from government. This is the real reliable media. In concepts like institutional communications from government, this means millions of euros to media, to newspapers, radios, televisions, and this scheme is repeated in Europe. So when other countries from outside of Europe are watching to Europe, maybe they think, okay, yes, Europe, the continent of democracy, we can have a great talks, the continent of enlightenment, the great discussions, the great scientists, the thinkers. No, this was in the past. This is now in the past. This is not the actual reality in our present days. In the present days is we have a massive crisis. Okay, I could develop a lot about the Russia-Ukrainian war, but the most important is there is a war against Russia. Ukraine is chapter 1, Europe is chapter 2. So we have to be prepared, spend a lot of money in Ukraine, in European rearmament, and that's all. And forget social policies, forget the people, forget the freedom of speech, forget everything, because we have a massive threat that Russia is like a meteorite who is going to impact over us, and we have to prepare ourselves to this situation. And in the final point, it's another very interesting point that in the rest of the world, they usually see Europe like the countries, the continent with the countries that the welfare state. But this is not the reality now. The reality now is full of governments, like, for example, Merz in Germany or Macron in France, and sometimes Starmer in Great Britain and Sanchez in Spain are suggesting the same. Okay, like, sorry people, we cannot spend a lot of time in welfare state, in social policies. The war is our priority, so take care of yourselves in your luck and forget us. Like, we lived above our possibilities, so now we have to reduce or maybe to eliminate the welfare state. So imagine this perception to the rest of the countries, the so-called developing countries, global south, third world, depending on the media or institution who is talking. Yes, you are countries with governments and media obsessed with censorship, different voices against official narrative. You are pressing your own people, and you are destroying the best parts from you, like the democracy. No democracy, there is only one voice, the official voice, and no more voices. No welfare state. Nothing is good in these Western countries in Europe. Sad reality.
Of course, still bringing also to the table to continue to talk about it. I quite remember quoting Professor Jagdish, who said that experts are like a knowledge bank, and we need to actually give importance to such discussions like we're having today. Very, intense to clarify, relearn, and educate the world on the realities and how the media can be used as this tool. And let me come back to you, Dr. Queenie. You said something, and I would love that you answer this question that pertains the place of Africa. Interpreting the narratives, because back in the days before the 90s, that we could have diverse media and alternative media, and even before we had the African news channels, we can be talking about Africa 24 and other Pan-African television channels that we actually came to the light, that we saw the revolution. But then when we look at it critically, even in the complex world, we still understand that there is still that the problem that the African media landscape seems entrapped, as there is still very little or subtle continental interpretation of the narratives regarding the situation of the African continent, and that is what some people will try to pundit, analyze, and bring aspects of neocolonialism to the fore, which you already mentioned. So, in your own perspective, what do you think can a government or even private media organizations can do in Africa to rewrite the African narratives and do contextual interpretation to meet up with the demands of, the globalization or international relations, as far as, cooperating with other countries are concerned? It's very important. Please, your mic. Your mic is muted, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I was saying that I'll take this question from a political economy perspective. There are two very important things that should be done if there's going to be meaningful solution in this regard. Number one, there is need for economic reawakening, right? Economy, because at the moment we have economic and political conditions that have held us or held the African people spellbound. So these economic conditions will not allow for a proper independence of media outfits. All right, you see this dependency playing out in different factors. For example, you have institutional influence. Right, Western-led organizations often impose good governance and structural adjustment as conditions for aid. And when you say good governance and structural adjustment as conditions for aid, it means it has to be within the, in fact, quote unquote, it has to be within the context of what they have defined as good governance. Anything outside of this concept is strikes you out of the precondition for such aid. All right, which oftentimes, puts us in a situation that reminds us of neocolonialism. So for any meaningful effort to be made in that direction, institutional influences has to be cut off. How? By building or developing the institutions, the local or national institutions within the African states. And of course, that can also extend by creating reasonable regional corporations, to bridge that gap. And then there's also the problem of funding, right? In 2005, significant aid was cut from major Western economies such as the US, Germany, and the rest of them to low-income African nations, right? Oftentimes, when this funding is cut off, there is little or nothing that these outfits can do. And then there is also the problem of trade dependency. If your product is being bought by a particular client, the day that client is unwilling to buy your product, the chances are great that your products are going to become perishable goods. So it is so important that Africa must not sit down and watch the new scramble for Africa to play in auto mode. All right, it has to be resisted with diplomacy. You see, Samuel Huntington, in his book in 1996, The Clash of Civilization, had put up an argument. The central argument is that the future global conflict will be driven by cultural and religious differences between distinct civilizations rather than ideological or economic ones. He actually pointed to very significant issues, about 8 of them, that suggest, interactions between the global world and developing economies. So if you look at the predictions that Samuel Huntington had put forward in that book, it will become really clear that what you see today is the remaking of the world, in a much more cultural sense. It is changing from the traditional method of power struggle to the more cultural ones of how you tell your stories and how you want your stories to be known, and all. Of course, what it is called propaganda. Yeah, propaganda. So the use of propaganda to control public opinion and narratives. So if any serious effort is expected, then I think that liberating Africa is going to be one of such agenda. And in liberating Africa, we must make sure that funding or trading is emphasized against rentierism. African states should afford to finance their projects and gradually shift away from being described as rent-seeking states. We have resources. These resources can be put to use in ways that can allow us to compete. If not with the global world, at least we can start the competition from our regional neighbors or continental neighbors and take it out to the globe. So as long as we remain dependent, as long as we remain rent-seeking, as long as we do not have real economic independence, as long as our political dependence or political independence is not genuine, then every other thing that we seek to achieve is going to be tied to the apron strings of these imperialists that are coming in with all forms of neocolonialism or new imperialism. Thank you.
Much of course it is imperative to understand where the challenges lie and how to navigate this a very timely question, which I will actually bring again to Madame Najeda. This is very timely because during a research that we carried out, looking at how the African media is interpreting the narratives or maybe information pertaining the African continent, we discovered that majority of African journalists are still very much, looking at the conventional media as ideal in terms of the source of information, that giving an alternative interpretation to what conventional media has presented makes probably, you always attract appellations like propagandists for this or that. And that is why it is important to understand still how Western hegemony in the media landscape works and how we can navigate this. I think you can maybe break this down for better understanding, dear Najed.
Yeah. So thank you very much. And sorry if I bring all of you back to the Western media hegemony. I had some technical issues about my mic and camera. Okay. So in my point of view, when we speak about Western media hegemony, at least in my point of view, we are referring to the strong influence of major Euro-American media outlets in shaping how the world understands conflicts. And that is what it is already said by my colleagues. These media organizations often decide which stories matter, whose voices are heard, and how events are framed. This influence is not neutral. It is linked to unequal global power relations, access to resources, of course, language dominance, and alignment with Western political interests. As a result, global events are often presented through frameworks that reflect Western values and priorities, while non-Western or African, as you just said now, perspectives are marginalized or silenced. We see this clearly in the way international conflicts are covered. Critical scholars, for example, have identified recurring patterns. Western or allied civilian suffering tends to receive more attention and empathy. Reporting relies heavily on official government and military sources. Conflicts in the global south are often framed through security or terrorism narratives, and historical or colonial contexts are frequently ignored. So together, these practices reinforce global inequalities in information and interpretation. I give you just an example, and I'm sure all of you know already that. The war in Gaza is a striking example for me. Western media coverage has often been criticized for using passive language when Palestinians are killed, while clearly naming responsibility when Israeli victims are involved. Israeli military actions are frequently framed as acts of self-defense, while Palestinians' voices, journalists, civilians, and legal experts are underrepresented. International humanitarian law and the realities of occupation, blockade, and structural violence are often pushed to the margins. This kind of coverage risks normalizing violence and hiding the deep power imbalance between an occupying power and an occupied population. By contrast, we notice coverage of the war in Ukraine has been marked by strong moral clarity. Western media have clearly identified aggression and emphasized sovereignty, civilian suffering, war crimes, and international law. Ukrainian voices are amplified immediately and consistently. Of course, we defend all the victims, of course. But while this type of coverage is legitimate, it reveals a double standard. Principles that are strongly defended in Ukraine are applied far less consistently in Gaza or in other conflicts such as Yemen or Sudan or Syria. This contrast is also shaped by what scholars call the, between brackets, politics of sympathy. Some Western media narratives have openly emphasized that Ukrainians are European, civilized, or like us. Such language, when he said like us, it means he has blonde hair, blue eyes, etc. Such language reveals racial and cultural hierarchies that influence who is seen as deserving empathy. This selective compassion undermines the universality of human rights and yes, sends the message that some lives matter more than others. However, Western media dominance is increasingly being challenged. Journalists and outlets from the global south, independent digital platforms, citizen reporting, and human rights organizations are offering alternative narratives. In Gaza, Palestinian journalists and human rights groups have played a crucial role in documenting realities on the ground, often at great personal risk, not only in Palestine and Gaza, even in other South global countries. Media from Africa, Latin America, and Asia have also drawn attention to the inconsistencies in how different wars are framed. So these unequal media narratives have serious consequences. They shape public opinion, influence diplomatic responses, affect humanitarian priorities, and weaken international accountability that I spoke about at the beginning. From a human rights perspective, selective outrage damages the credibility of international norms and reinforces perception of double standards in global governance. So criticizing Western media hegemony, I mean, in my point of view, is not a rejection of press freedom. No, not at all, or professional journalism. It is a call for epistemic justice. It means recognizing multiple voices, histories, and ways of understanding the world. The contrasting coverage of Gaza and Ukraine shows how media power creates moral hierarchies. So a truly plural media landscape requires breaking narrative monopolies and making space of perspectives that challenge dominant geopolitical interests. That's what I wanted to add with my colleagues.
Absolutely, thank you. And that was very profound. The agenda setting is always very intentional with an objective, like we highlighted already in the platform, and in the continuing to understand how these narratives affect the minds of the millions of viewers. We want to look at a case study. Earlier this year, there was a meeting between the president of the Republic of South Africa, that is Cyril Ramaphosa, and the president of the United States of America, Donald Trump. And during their meeting in public, there was actually evidence that Donald Trump presented to South Africa, portraying the existence of Afrikaner genocide, and that actually led to some sort of I don't know if it's appropriate to use the word diplomatic bullying. Until date, we still see that there is that the I don't know antagonism between the two countries. With you, Professor Jagdish, let's try to understand how this in the space of the Western or conventional media, how it challenges social justice and leads to diplomatic relegation of countries. And then the second part of the question, how the plurality of the media has helped the world to understand also the alternative coming from different news against understanding the realities on the ground.
Yeah. Actually, I would like to bring attention of all the panelists to another use of media as a soft power that has contributed a lot into building up the Western hegemony over the decades or over the centuries also. You see, this media through films, through TV serials, through debates, through advertisements, they promote a particular social value system, a particular lifestyle, and particular products also. So we have grown up seeing Hollywood movies where it is mentioned that Russians are and to sometimes Latin Americans or Native Americans also are portrayed as villains. And sorry to say, in most of the films, Africans are used in the roles of slaves. So that is a kind of building a particular mindset about civilizations. Media building is a viewpoint of civilization that this is civilized, this is not civilized, this is good, this is bad. So this way they are promoting their own cultural values. There has been a very good study by Roland Robertson, a British sociologist, and Professor Chomako of Lomonosov Moscow State University on inter-civilizational conflicts. And it is mentioned that the hegemony is built not only on political and economic aspects, but slowly and subtly it is the hegemony in the form of religious, cultural, civilizational hegemony. And for that, media is used as a soft power. So it is now time that we understand the role of media in this aspect also in promoting our own value system, our own culture, our own lifestyle, and religious beliefs also. That they must also coexist and gain equal respect. You see, leadership is not being the loudest voice in a room, but leadership is creating a room where even the most feeble voice can be heard equally and respectfully. And that is what we have to see. We have to build up, we have to use media in that way to promote our own values also, culture also, and unite as a global South. And I see that tomorrow there may become that not only global South but global East will also unite because global East has its own value systems and they are important. In this respect, I would like to mention a recent interview of President Putin of Russia with an Indian TV channel before coming to India. And he has specifically mentioned twice or thrice that preservation and protection of our culture, our language, our heritage, our values is extremely important for us and they are non-negotiable. They cannot be compromised. And he also mentioned that any conflict on international scale starts when there is a perception of threat to culture and to religion and to heritage. So that is how media has to be trained to project this viewpoint also and differentiate between the stages of different civilizations as equal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jagdish. Coming back to you, Dr. Ukweni, still under the context of the African continent, we heard Madame Najeta highlighting some key examples of how narratives are being shaped regarding Africa. I will take the case study of the coronavirus. When it started, we saw narratives as like with news on how Africa will be a ground for maybe dead bodies, like the work on dead bodies. That was actually so intense, and it created some sort of fear in the minds on the consequences of the COVID-19 on Africa. So it brings us again to interpreting the challenges of the African media landscape. I will take a personal example, which I don't know if it actually suits here. In the early days of practicing journalism, because sometimes as a journalist, you have primary news source, you also have a secondary news source. So there was this, you discover that when you want to get information from conventional news organs, you always see appellations like dictator when it comes to an African president, regardless of the work that the president is actually doing in the country. You always see more of security challenges and, stagnation. And I think that actually affected a whole lot of journalists, including beginners like us. But then the Pan-African editorial line gave us a trajectory to navigate in order to understand how these things are maybe an agenda that is always set for a design objective. It now brings us to understanding the role of the advice that we can give African media landscape, including citizen journalists, because we are applauding the plurality of the media, but then there is also large polarization. The case of Nigeria, your country, recently Donald Trump said it was going to invade Nigeria, and we saw many Nigerians calling for Donald Trump to come into Nigeria for such a military operations. Now, did we also probably look at the impact of such an act, and maybe probably internal and geopolitical impacts? So let's try to see how, from your perspective, the advice that we can give, especially to citizen journalists, and in this era of new media, in the handling of information patterning, especially very strategic cases of the respective countries, to be able to meet up with the challenges of the new world.
Okay, thank you very much for that background. I would charge that we must be careful to understand firsthand that the colonialists, the imperialists are here for what we have, not necessarily for charity or support of democratic institutions. It is the resources that is the driving force for engagement or intervention, if you like. And bearing that in mind, I want to remind us that if we mismanage information, we might ourselves be igniting what is called a proxy war, which is an armed conflict where at least one of the combatants is directed by an external power. And I want to cite relevant examples of such. If you remember the Vietnam War, if you remember the Vietnam War, you see that on the one hand, you had Vietnam, on the other hand, you had Korea, and the US and the Soviet Union fought for ideological supremacy. From that, by the end of the day, it was both it was both Vietnam and Korea that actually counted their losses. If you move away from there to go to the Soviet-Afghan War of 1979 to 1989, you see you'll discover that the US had funded the Mujahideen or something, the Mujahideen to bleed the invading Soviet forces. If you also move away to the Yemen civil war, you see a modern conflict where Saudi Arabia was supporting the government and Iran was supporting the Houthi rebel, right? Having vied for regional dominance. So some of this context, these examples gives us a context to understand that if we mismanage information, it may actually give room for a proxy war where we suffer, and these same people would come with humanitarian intervention that does not mean any humanitarian gesture. but using humanitarian intervention as a mere cover to actually exploit and extend their domination and control over what we probably know as it is today. So citizen journalism is so important that if you see something, say something, but you must report only what is verifiably correct. You cannot afford to send out narratives that is false. You cannot afford to give out information that is misleading. You cannot afford to mismanage sensitive information that you are privy to by reason of your professional practice. So if we bring this together in mind, we would be emphasizing certain key issues. One, professionalism in information management. Two would be advancement of state purpose. If you have a national, and I think that this is the advancement of state purpose should be integrated into the national orientation programs of the National Orientation Agency, where specialized programs are prepared, where trainings are prepared, or rather, media practitioners are put through necessary training of programs to understand proper reportage, right, where necessary. And like I always say, no matter what prescription is put on the table to solving the problems in Africa, the root of such solution must be grounded in human security, which is allowing a proper avenue, a legitimate avenue for human subsistence, without which no tangible progress can be made. Thank you.
Indeed, very imperative. The ball goes to the other question. To the stakeholders, of course, be it the political stakeholders, to ensure a fertile media landscape that will put a proper agenda for various countries that will not actually be contradictory with the realities of the political rhetorics in the country. And we are coming just to remind you that, ladies and gentlemen, you are onto the platform Global Insight. And today we want to look at the plurality of the media landscape and how it has challenged Western hegemony, looking at the pros, the cons, and of course, looking also at how it is imperative to use media as a watchdog in a way that will promote a very positive agenda or narrative for a country in line with its multilateral dealings, diplomatic dealings, that will in turn benefit the entire country. And I think because of this plurality, there is already the alternative for media that has made us to have the capacity to question more, borrowing this slogan from RT, like question more to understand how the communication or the information system flows, especially in line with geopolitical dealings or international relations. And coming back to you, Najet, you quite elaborated well on the Western hegemony, especially championed by conventional media. So now it is imperative to have, in your opinion, what do you think are those parameters that can be used by the alternative media, particularly from Africa, to be able to, to present a well-balanced alternative that will champion, first of all, the positive side of events in countries in Africa, or probably the global south, as you highlighted earlier on?
Yeah, so I will answer just by an example. Tunisia is an African country, right?
Yeah.
So since the 2011 revolution, Tunisia has occupied a unique position in the Arab media landscape, at least in the Arab world. The collapse of censorship and the expansion of press freedom enabled the emergence of a plural and dynamic media sphere. So this plurality has not only challenged domestic authoritarian legacies, but has also allowed Tunisian media actors to contest and nuance dominant Western media narratives about Tunisia and regional issues. So examining Tunisian examples offers valuable insight into how local media plurality can resist global information hierarchies. That's why I wanted to give this example. So following the Arab Spring, Tunisian journalists gained unprecedented freedom after the dictatorship to report on politics, corruption, human rights, independent newspapers, radio stations, television channels, and digital platforms proliferated. Political parties also. So association, we have 225 associations. This diversification enabled Tunisian media to produce locally grounded narratives rather than relying on Western media as the primary interpreters of Tunisian realities. While at that time, until now, Western outlets frequently portrayed Tunisia as the sole between success story, comparing to Libya and Syria, of course, success story of the Arab Spring. So Tunisian media highlighted persistent structural problems such as regional inequality, youth unemployment, and social exclusion. This contrast illustrates how media plurality allowed Tunisian journalists to challenge simplified or stereotype celebratory Western framings. So just a clear example of this divergence emerged during the work of the Truth and Dignity Commission, IVD. So Tunisian media devoted extensive coverage to public hearings of the victims, as it happened in Rwanda, I guess, or Spain. So devoted coverage to victims' testimonies and debates on accountability for past abuses. Victims of tortures and political repression were given visibility and legitimacy in the public sphere. By contrast, parts of Western media and policy-oriented commentary often framed transitional justice through the lens of political stability and economic reform, sometimes depicting it as a source of polarization. So Tunisian media plurality enabled a counter-narrative that framed transitional justice as a human rights obligation and a core demand of the revolution. So there was also the terrorist attacks in Tunisia in 2015 in a hotel in Sousse. And subsequent years, Western media coverage of Tunisia increasingly adopted a security-oriented lens, emphasizing fragility and the risk of extremism. Tunisian media, however, offered more complex interpretations by linking violence to long-standing socio-economic marginalization, governance failures, and regional disparity. At the end, independent journalists warned against excessive securitization and the erosion of civil liberties. This plurality of perspective challenged Western narratives that prioritize counterterrorism over democratic freedoms. at the end, Clarice, in my point of view, coming to your question, we must be careful not to idealize media plurality. So the weakening of Western media dominance does not automatically lead to more democratic debate. It's not true. So media diversification also brings serious risks. Increased polarization, the spread of disinformation, fragmented public spaces, and new forms of power concentration, whether in the hands of authoritarian states, large tech companies, or opaque algorithms. So we may not be witnessing the end of hegemony, of course, but rather its transformation. We need a transformation rather than the end of the hegemony. The real question for me is, therefore, not whether media plurality exists, but who controls it, who benefits from it, and under what ethical and political conditions it operates. If media plurality is to strengthen democracy rather than weaken it, it must go hand in hand with media literacy, accountability, the protection of independent journalism, and strong human rights safeguards. So ultimately, our challenge, at least here in Tunisia, our challenge is to ensure that media plurality does not simply replace one dominant narrative with many competing and polarized ones, but helps build a truly inclusive, plural, and justice-oriented global public conversation. That's it.
Impressive to ask, of course, who controls and who benefits from media plurality. A question that if is very important to answer with you, Professor Jagdisha. We are looking at the impact of this media plurality on globalization, and of course, it ties again with the question of who benefits from it. The plurality of the media and how it will probably affect the concept of globalization in the world of multipolarity.
Madam Najib has put up a very valid point that who controls the media. And as I see in South Asia, most of the media houses are being controlled now, are owned also, are taken over by corporate houses. And these corporate houses are aligned to certain particular political systems. So that is the way that there may be so many, but they can be polarized. Yes. And one aspect has more I would like to mention here is that, as we all know, it is not democracy or to stop drug trafficking, but it is the lure of grabbing minerals and resources that is the basis of Western interests. So you see, for them, commerce matters more than culture. And I would like to give an example that a few years back we have seen how the giant Buddhist structures in Bamiyan, Afghanistan, were destroyed by extremist forces. It didn't create as much flutter in the media or in the political circles of West as much as the 9/11 attack on World Trade Center, because the commercial aspects were hurting. And that is how I would again like to mention from the speech of President of Mexico, Madam Claudia Sheinbaum, when the tariffs were imposed by Donald Trump, sir, that she said, we will not starve if we don't get KFC, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, or Pepsi. But if we develop alternatives, your workers will starve because of lack of jobs. So you see, it is the commercial interests that are being promoted through clever use of media also of the corporate houses, so that they gain contracts in the conflict zones in the name of reconstruction, and loans from World Bank and IMF and other agencies are thrust upon them, and then they are used strategically for promoting their political interests also. So media's role is diversified, and it has to be very cleverly articulated. I think the transformation that is taking place when global south is coming together, or there is realignment of forces in the forms of BRICS, SCO, and other new platforms, this transformation will be sustainable only when it is projected judiciously as non-Western rather than anti-Western. The time it is promoted as anti-Western, there are equal and multiple reactions from the West. So let us try to build up slowly but steadily our own value system, our own commercial markets in such a way that you gain strength, and in that media must be utilized. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we ask, can balancing narratives or information narratives change about the balance of power or in the global world? And this time around, we are going to Poland to welcome another guest who just tuned in at the moment in the person of Mateusz Piskuski, who is actually a journalist and also a political analyst. You're welcome, sir, and I will be welcoming you with this question: how we can control polarization in the media landscape to ensure that this plurality doesn't actually escalate or leads to more vulnerability that will probably build a more tumultuous world.
Thank you very much, and thank you for invitation for this discussion. I really appreciate such debates with renowned scholars, experts, and analysts. And you also touched the most important topics, I guess, for all the world, not only for Africa or for Europe, but as well for other continents. For the moment being, I would say that when it comes to media pluralism as such, we are living in an age of deglobalization. Deglobalization means implementing the idea of the so-called sovereign internet or sovereign websites, sovereign information spheres in different civilizational centers. Let's focus on the three main superpowers which already have more or less sovereignty when it comes to information access. It's of course the United States, which used to be a hegemon, but at the moment being it's not anymore. I'm talking to you from Europe, and as you perhaps know, European Union started its own fight against several social media platforms coming from the United States. It's trying to implement several limits on social media like X of Elon Musk and so on. The second pole in this multipolar world when it comes to information technologies and media technologies as such is of course China, with its own possibilities of creating social media and disseminating different narratives through those social media. But contrary to the United States, in the past, I would like to add that China is focused only on its own population. Yes, it's not expanding when it comes to media, particularly when it comes to social media, with one exception, TikTok, of course, but it's quite different. And as we all know, it's also limited now in the United States when it comes to purchasing the American branch of TikTok by American corporate capital. And then you have Russia, which is also trying. I mean, Russia is being forced to create its own information space and its own media landscape because of the blockade of main media outlets and main social media as well by the West. I mean, the sanctions, the limitations. Not everyone can use, or not for everyone, it's possible to use VPN, yes, to reach, let's say, the global social media and such, yes. European Union and Europe as such is left without its own media sphere, without its own information space, which means that it is still controlled, regardless the fact of the war between European Union, Brussels, European Commission, and some of the media outlets, social media outlets from the United States. It's still deprived of its own media sphere. Yes. When it comes to other polls, well, I think that Professor Jagdish Khatri told already about India, yes. So I guess that India as a sovereign pole in this multipolar world will also create its own possibilities, its own space when it comes to the media. So I focused on social media. Why did I do that? Because if you look at the number of viewers, number of readers, when you compare traditional media to the social media platforms, you see that it's the social media platforms which control the narratives at the moment being. And I think it's a global thing. It's not about Europe or United States, but I think it's a kind of global process, yes. Let's give us an example. We all know the very well-known Trumpist journalist from the United States, Tucker Carlson. If you compare the number of viewers he had when he used to work at Fox News and the number of viewers he has now when he runs his own media outlets, his own social media, different social media platforms and so on, his influence now is definitely bigger and more important than it used to be in the past when he worked for the traditional media like Fox News. And I think this is the tendency which we can see in almost every country, in almost every civilizational pole of the contemporary world. The question is, when it comes to plurality, the question is if within this process of deglobalization of media, which we are now observing in different parts of the world, we will be still able to protect the idea of pluralism as such, because you can talk about pluralism only in case when, let's say, the decision-making center doesn't control everything. And in case of poles like United States, the decision, or China as well, the decision-making centers, I mean, the ruling class is controlling everything when it comes to regulation, regulations, and so on, of their own sovereign internet or of their own social media. That's the ones they create. So the question is if we are able in the coming years to discuss, for instance, to have debates like we have today, yes, or perhaps we will live in totally distinct, separate media spheres, yes, without global insights as you, without global discussions, without such an opportunity. And the answer to this question is, I think, it's my personal view, to develop several, let's say, more or less independent media, social media platforms, which are not connected to the main poles of this multipolar world. I'll give you an example. I don't want to advertise any kind of such media, of course, but for the moment being, I think that such a platform could be, for instance, Telegram, which is, which was originally connected to Russia, of course, and to Russian citizen, but for the moment being, we see that it's, let's say, not connected to Russian power structures. And that's why, in my opinion, Pavel Durov, as its founder, he's repressed, and the pressure is exerted on him, for instance, by the European authorities, by the French authorities, and some other countries. So maybe there is a chance, and this chance are new social media created and run from countries which are more or less neutral. Telegram, as far as I know, is run from United Arab Emirates, which are not separate pole in this multipolar world. This is my general idea, general impression about that. But anyway, I guess it will be a very hard process. And in the coming years, we will face really severe problems when it comes to inter-civilizational dialogue because of the lack of communications and because of the lack of platforms which could be used globally by different civilizational centers. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, I will stay with you from what you highlighted. We can see that another one effect of that the plurality of the media is disinformation, because the availability of alternative media has actually led some countries losing their hegemon, be it diplomatically and politically. We can also see that the plurality has given space for countries of the global south, especially in Africa. We saw last year how the African voice was resonating at the United Nations Security Council, calling for a voice in terms of decision making. And this, of course, is as a result of this media plurality. But now, fake news and disinformation, especially around interconnected topics, something that is somehow very challenging at this moment. So, what do you think is the way forward or the solution to such limiting disinformation in this era of media diversity?
Well, when it comes to the notion of disinformation, it's misused by the current authorities in Europe, in my country as well, because every opinion which is not in line with, let's say, the line of the ruling class is claimed to be disinformation. Yes, and actually, the whole notion of disinformation is very controversial to me personally. Why? Because let's give an example, a very simple example. Poland now, and it's raining outside. Yes, so if I would say that we have a sunny day, a sunny afternoon today in Poland, it would be a disinformation, right? But if I would say that it's quite nice weather, it's not a disinformation. It's my own personal opinion. Yes, I give my opinion about the weather. I may like rainy weather. Why not? Yes. It's, let's say, my subjective view of the weather and of every given process. Yes. And contemporary Europe, European power structures, European ruling class, doesn't make a distinction between opinion and information. It's and that's why the notion of disinformation is very blurred, I would say. We cannot divide opinions and informations, opinions and news, and that's why we have all this, I would say, censorship. Censorship, yes, in European countries. We had lately two examples of that. One was about the pandemics of coronavirus, when you had to stand in line with the government line and government censorship. Yes, this censorship was kind of a hybrid censorship because it was it was implemented not only by the governments but also by huge corporations running main social media platforms. Yes? I mean, if you publish something about coronavirus on different social platforms, you will get a shadow ban. Yeah, so no one can reach your material advantage. The other issue, I mean, it's not so painfully felt in Asia, in Africa, and in other countries, but my country, for instance, is a frontline country when it comes to the war in Ukraine, as you know. It's just a few hundred kilometers from here. It's happening quite close to us. And that's why we have a strict censorship when it comes to voicing our own opinions about this war. Yes, so this is another example of a strict control, and of misusing and abusing the notion of disinformation. Yes, I mean. Several European countries have already implemented this notion of disinformation to their rules and regulations, as well as to their criminal codexes. Yes. For instance, perhaps not my country, but let's say Baltic countries like Estonia, Latvia, they have already implemented penal law which forbids you to voice any kind of opinion about Russia and about the conflict in Ukraine, because you will be accused of spreading disinformation, not opinion, but disinformation. Right? And this is a huge threat for all of us, I think. I think that our colleagues and friends in Africa and Asia to carefully look at what's going on now in Europe when it comes to those issues. And you should try to avoid those mistakes which our governments and our ruling class does when it comes to disinformation.
Absolutely, and it is imperative that we look for that point of contact or interest. Still with you, Matthias. Let's look at. Do you think that with this declining Western hegemony due to declining mainstream or media, there can still be some sort of a collaboration in a new world order that suits the interests of every nation? Is there any possibility?
There's always a small chance for that, of course, but in the age of confrontation, I guess that we are living in an age of inevitable confrontation, because, as you have noticed, the multipolarity is still shaping its form. I mean, we don't have the final new world order, multipolar new world order. We are still in the phase of global change. We are still in the period when former global hegemons are trying to protect the elements of their hegemony. Yes, so we are living in an age of confrontation when it comes to the communications, the information exchange between different poles of this future multipolar world. It will be very hard in the coming years, but I still believe that we will be able to preserve at least small social media platforms, which will enable us to communicate. Because I mean, several parts of the ruling class in different parts of our world will try to do whatever they can do to limit our communication. Because as far as we communicate, we have an opportunity to know each other, to understand each other, and to also understand the interests of each other. And having such an opportunity, understanding each other, is a real threat for those who are heading us towards confrontation, of course. Because I mean, if we discuss several topics, if we understand each other, it's impossible to to start another war against our neighbor or against another pole in this multipolar world. I'll give you a short example. I mean, when it comes to again to Russia, yes, we are in the Western camp, let's say, in Poland, and we have Russia, which is presented as an eternal enemy, eternal foe of our country, and so on. And the main point, I mean, the main thing the ruling class has done was the first thing they have done was closing the borders and depriving us of any possibility of direct contact with our Russian neighbors. Yes? And this shows how it's important to preserve these communication lines. That's why I'm grateful to you for what you are doing.
Thank you so much. We continue, of course, to give the platform for experts to share knowledge, to share and give a deeper analysis of the realities on the ground, so that countries or civil society individuals can actually act from the place of what they know and not from the point of ignorance. I think we're rounding off, but it is imperative to get, a concluding statement from the guest, starting with you, dear Najet. We want to look at the future of global communication that will enhance, this philosophy of multilateralism.
Yeah. Let me tell you and to the audience something. Media plurality is often discussed as a technical or a professional issue, but it is far more than that. It is fundamental human rights principle and separable from freedom of expression and the right to access information. Plurality is not just about the number of media outlets. It is about who we see, who is heard, and who remains invisible in the global information landscape. The gradual decline of Western media dominance is reshaping how information flows across the Middle East, North Africa, and in Africa, and Latin America, etc. This shift brings both opportunity and serious risks. On the one hand, the weakening of Western narrative control challenges long-standing Eurocentric ideas about democracy. And I gave you the example of Tunisia after the revolution of 2011. So in Tunisia, for example, local media and civil society now have more space to report on grassroots movements, social protests, and transitional justice efforts without filtering these stories through external models of what democracy should look like. The Tunisian democracy should look like American democracy, or no, maybe as the European democracy, whatever. So across MENA and sub-Saharan Africa, local voices are increasingly able to offer post-colonial and decolonial perspectives on conflict, migration, and gender-based violence. This is not just about telling different stories. It is about epistemic justice, allowing communities to produce their own knowledge and define their own realities. This shift also exposes glaring double standards in international coverage. Certain human rights violations receive global attention, and I gave you an example, while others, such as labor struggles or regional protests in Tunisia. I don't want to give another example from another country. So these remain largely invisible. Local media plurality, however, helps reveal these silences and challenge the narratives that dominate the international stage. Yet, the decline of Western media hegemony is not automatically liberating. In many cases, the space left behind is quickly filled by state-controlled media, securitized narratives, political elites, or dominant digital platforms or financial dominant stakeholders. In Tunisia and across the region, journalists and human rights defenders still face judicial harassment, censorship, and surveillance, especially when they challenge powerful interests. The consequences are deeply gendered. Women journalists and women human rights defenders are particularly vulnerable to online harassment, smear campaigns, and other forms of intimidation designed to push them out of public debate. Meanwhile, calls to move beyond Western media dominance are sometimes, between brackets, move beyond Western media dominance. As the Tunisian authorities are right now saying, are sometimes co-opted by governments as justification for repression, invoking sovereignty or multipolarity, while global control over platforms and content moderation remains largely in Western hands. So the decline of Western media hegemony is therefore neither neutral nor inherently emancipatory. It is a contested terrain, whether it leads to greater freedom, accountability, and pluralism or deeper repression depends on whether societies actively defend independent journalism, media plurality, and the rights of human rights defenders. So we must seize this moment of change to ensure that all voices, especially the marginalized, the minorities, the vulnerable categories, are not only heard but protected. Only then can the promise of a more plural, accountable, and just media landscape become a reality. Thank you.
Indeed, the answers will lie in the strategy that government, civil society, independent journalists, and all stakeholders put together for a common objective. And with you, Professor Jagdish, what do you think are those tactics or strategies that can actually correlate with the moral compacts or the cultural compacts of the world to ensure that the information space is not toxic, that will lead to further polarization or vulnerability of the global space in the media?
Yeah. We all understand how effective the media is in building narratives and perceptions. So it is time that this effectiveness of media is used to promote collaboration in place of confrontation, globalization in place of polarization, interdependence in place of dominance, and I would like to add harmony in place of hegemony. Let us utilize media for these objectives, and this will only make the transformation sustainable and long lasting. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And rounding off with you, Matthias, of course, when we look at ITA, we want to understand the strategies, and also according to some viewpoint, it is difficult to have that fertile information space because of the diplomatic gimmicks coming from the aspects of international relations and globalization as well. And some pundits still say that diplomacy is all about interest. now that there is this, controversy, information, and correlation in terms of bilateral relations, multilateral relations with the global world, what practical parameters can all the stakeholders put together to ensure that the information landscape is a tool to foster this co-relationship rather than bring about the fragmentation of the world in presenting different narratives that actually will benefit a collective or selective few individuals who actually control the world.
Well, we can, of course, still think about different norms and standards established by, let's say, non-governmental structures all over the world, but how to implement them? That's the basic question. I mean, you can have several organizations, for instance, gathering different representatives of different kinds of media and creating their own propositions when it comes to global standards about that. You can even, let's say, work out some codex of good practices when it comes to communications and media. That's not an issue. It's of course possible, but still the logic of conflict and of confrontation will prevail as far as the main stakeholders, the main actors of international relations at the moment being are interested in confrontation, not in communication. So it will be very hard. I think it's still possible to find a kind of solution by creating alternative networks of non-governmental activists, of non-governmental journalists, of human rights activists from all over the world. But it is the only thing we can do. I mean, and we cannot count on the, let's say, on the support from the governmental structures or power structures of the contemporary world. Perhaps in some countries, yes. I mean, in those countries which are not so directly engaged in the current geopolitical rivalry and current confrontation. But basically, we have to count on ourselves. I mean, on the structures of what is or used to be called in the West civil society. I don't like this term because it's quite controversial as well for us, and it has been found by some globalists, as we know. Nevertheless, let's say independent parts of different societies could communicate with each other using the existing possibilities, and perhaps they could create a kind of alternative network for exchanging information, for publishing it. And as far as still we live in the period that different social media work in different civilizational centers in different points of this world, with some exceptions, of course, but still we can communicate when it comes, for instance, to our communication with Africa, European communication with Africa, European communication with Asia. I mean, not whole Asia, because it's hard to communicate with our Chinese colleagues who are quite close, have closed their information space, but with most of the Asian countries, it's also still possible. That's why perhaps not everything is lost, but we have, I mean, we as independent thinkers, as independent journalists, as independent publishers, we have this, let's say, responsibility to preserve the communication lines, the communication channels, which our governments, which global power structures want to close. So let's do our best.
Okay, thank you so much, Matthias, of course, and that brings us, ladies and gentlemen, to the end of today's discussion on media plurality and the effects on or decline on Western hegemony. Of course, from the analysis presented, we can actually see that it is a complex scenario. But then, of course, if we maybe stakeholders are intentional towards mitigating the effects of, let's say, global politics on the society, then it is imperative that the information landscape will not be more toxic, that will bring about conflicts of the minds and, of course, more communication or information wars tearing the global world apart. I want to appreciate you, lady and gentlemen, for the diverse perspectives on that topic for today. And I think that it will go a long way to continue to provide the alternative as we continue also to question more, to understand how the world can actually limit some of the adverse effects of, global interaction, maybe government to government, and bring a new public discourse that will be more constructive and healthy for the general population, and also ensure a society that is safe for mankind. Thank you so much, and of course, do have a lovely moment in the company of our transmissions. Wishing you all the best as we prepare for the festive, or we're already in the festive season. But see you next week for another edition of the program. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
Merry
Bye.
Christmas and Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
This program was brought to you by Globus.